In the House of Commons today, the Conservatives asked the Liberals if they were going to fire Canada's first female finance minister. And it just kind of went downhill from there. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. Now, anyone who watches this channel knows that I have made it clear that the far left loves to pander, and they want to pander to women especially. So they will talk about gender equality and they will talk about bodily autonomy over and over and over again. And they will do it on baseless claims. They will do it without any proof to the contrary because they are banking on an emotional reaction, not a thought process. They're banking on you voting based on your emotions, not on what's best for you and your family and your loved ones, which is what we've got going on right now. It all started a couple of days ago when Justin Trudeau went in front of the Equality of Voice or something, which is a women's group that tries to put women into political office. And because I think in his mind it was an easy association to make a claim about women in office and Kamala Harris, or because they are desperate to gather the vote, right? They think in their mind that if they can get enough women to vote for them, they're going to save their jobs. Before we go too far into that, I want to show you what got it all started, right? Because you can't even believe this. So he's at this women's voices thing, and he's, of course, trying to make points. He's trying to make himself look tough on the world stage as well. So he's trying to do a whole bunch of stuff with this one little 5 minutes on stage, right? And in that, he says a couple of real good gems.
Add women, change politics, which to us is more than just words. We've taken action to make it a reality, appointing the first female finance minister. We were supposed to be on a steady, if difficult sometimes, march towards progress. And yet, just a few weeks ago, the United States voted for a second time to not elect its first woman president. Everywhere, women's rights and women's progress is under attack, overtly and subtly. But I want you to know that I am, and always will be, a proud feminist. You will always have an ally in me and in my government.
Laying it on a little thick there, bud. That's I just want to say that right there. Oh man. So you want to blame all of the United States because they didn't vote far left? Because you ran, because there was a woman in that far left position, I don't think mattered to anybody. I don't believe that they cared about her, whether it be a female or a male. They just voted against the idea of what the far left represents, which is, a lot of the problem that we're about to see right now, because he's like, oh, we appointed our first female finance minister, and I'm a hardcore feminist. And unfortunately for him, it turns out that he's trying to replace the first female finance minister with a man. And that will, of course, make his whole entire cabinet unbalanced. But he's got a couple of people holding two jackets. Oh, man. I'm telling you, this guy. So today in the House of Commons, right out of the gate, they were talking about the guardrail going over $40 billion. They were talking about Mark Carney, and they were hammering home the fact that he's about to fire the first female finance minister, and he's not so much of a feminist after all, because they are trying to show women that he's not what he claims to be. Now, before I go too deep into that, I would say this one thing. It's obvious to someone like me that he's not anywhere near the caliber of feminist that he claims to be. And it has nothing to do with his politics or any of that matter. Here's a guy who was the highest ranking politician in Canada. He's born wealthy. He's been living on the Canadian dole and a private jet. He's got people inviting him to islands that are basically just one resort. And inside of all of that, his wife left him. Does that make any sense to anyone? I mean, come on now. Just let's lay that out. Let's just be straightforward. Here he has power and money. And his wife left him. And he hid it from the world for a couple of years. There's something about this personality that he's not telling you. That's the point I'm trying to make right there. There's obviously something about this guy that is clearly not as quote unquote feminist as he wants you to believe.
Thank you, Speaker. I was also at the Equal Voice Gala the other night, and I truly enjoyed the Prime Minister's speech, which listed dozens of things that we have tangibly done as a government to advance gender equality, including a cabinet that has equal numbers of men and women, including $10 a day childcare, including a female entrepreneurship strategy, $500 million going out across the country to end the process of gender-based violence. Meanwhile, the deputy leader of the Conservatives in her speech completely undermined the whole point of Equal Voice, Mr. Speaker. It's very telling about what the Conservatives think about equality.
It's very telling, she said, and I agree with her. Because she said that what Melissa Lantsman said undermines the entire point of Equal Voice. She said that. She said that undermines the entire point. Okay, so you believe that Melissa Lantsman doesn't agree with you, the deputy leader of the party, which is a strange thing for a person who's trying to say that empowering women in politics, and here we have a woman who's second overall inside of the political party. Maybe there's something I'm missing. So I went ahead and I had to listen to some of what Melissa Lantsman said. I'll show you a couple of things that I believe were said by Melissa Lantsman, which triggered the other woman and prompted her to say undermines the whole purpose of the other thing, of the Equal Voices.
I can't help to think that the country is divided. And I'm going to say that we're divided because I think people would rather hurl insults instead of trying to understand anybody who doesn't hold the same view as you do. I think we're divided because leaders in our country and in countries around the world prioritize labels instead of prioritizing substance and action. And most of all, I think we're divided because we've placed diversity of thought on the back burner in an exchange for lofty platitudes of those who believe that all women who hold elected office have to have the same view on every single issue. I have seen women in my party rise to positions of great responsibility because of merit, because of excellence, because of intelligence, and not because of quotas. If you aren't prepared to speak about the 74% rise in sexual assaults, the 83% rise in human trafficking, the single mothers watering down their milk so they can feed their kids because they can't get by, the brave women standing in Iran against their oppressors, the sexual violence in acts of terror, the missing and murdered Indigenous women that still don't have justice, then why bother pretending any of it matters? It can't be about gendered balanced cabinets or a humankind dictionary. It can't be about other things that pander and demean. It has to be real. It has to be more than symbols. It has to be actual substance. It has to be real results for real people. And I am happy to fight that fight with you every single day of the week.
First of all, let me say that I think Melissa Lantsman was very brave to stand up there in a room full of, predominantly in a room full of women. Because when you don't agree with a woman on the far left, they get very, very cross. And she basically trashed everything that the far left stands for when it comes to what they consider to be equality. As supported by that MP who said she went against everything that group stands for. because she thinks that you should stand up there and say, you know, because you are a woman, you deserve it, or whatever it may be. And Melissa Lansman stood up there and said, well, if you've earned it, then you shouldn't be suppressed for it. And everyone in my party got there because they deserve it, which I suppose is part of the thing that struck a nerve. Anyway, let's get back to this, what is about to turn into one of the nasty, I mean, oh man, you couldn't believe it. There was so much yelling back and forth across the chamber, the chair, the speaker, excuse me, Fergus, it was funny to watch because he didn't want to come out to be too cross, you know, because it was everybody that was yelling at each other was all of the one gender. And at the same time, he's trying to get a hold of them, you know? And I was like, yeah, this is like a guy trying to mediate a fight between his sister and his wife. Just, but I kept some of it because the point that for me, the point of this is to try to show the contrast, the difference between people who think that you should be given it and people who think you should earn it. And I believe that to be very significant. I believe that to be significant to people who are casting their vote. I believe that if you want to vote smart, you got the one vote, you want to put it in the right place, right? You want to do that with thought and foresight. So the best way to do that is to consider many of the sides of the coin, you know?
This fake feminist prime minister is determined to decimate Canadians' lives by destroying the economy, and he will throw anyone under the bus to do it, including his token finance female minister. Canadians know he's weak. They know he's lost control of his cabinet and his spending. The question is, will the first ever female finance minister have the courage to stand up to that fake feminist prime minister and stick to her promised $40 billion deficit?
Mr. Speaker, here's something tangible that the Leader of the Opposition could do. In the next election, he could run more women, and he could get more women in those seats. If he really wants to prove his credibility in terms of standing up for women, let me just give you some stats, Mr. Speaker. In this current House of Commons, 16.9% of the women elected sit here in the Liberal benches. How many in the Conservative benches, Mr. Speaker? 6%. That's the kind of numbers that we are talking about.
Mr. Speaker, on the Conservative side of the House, women stand here because we're skilled and we're allowed to use our voice. Mr. Speaker, Jody Wilson-Raybould is testament to this. That is a fake prime minister, but that is not the point. We're not here to talk about gender. We're here to talk about the economy, and it is destroyed under that fake feminist prime minister. So again, if she is not a token, will she stand up to him and say, no, I will abide by my $40 billion deficit guardrail to help this economy get back on track and save Canadians' lives?
Speaker, that woman might feel like a token, but I never do. Mr. Speaker, because the numbers don't speak in their favor. There are 30% of these seats taken by women, Mr. Speaker. Fully 17% of those are here over on this side. More than half of the women elected are Liberals, Mr. Speaker, and the other half are the rest of the parties combined. So they should do their job, Mr. Speaker, as parties and get more women to run.
I mean, that was a really good mixture of, let me poke him for trying to say that he's the feminist and he hired this first female finance minister, which is a mouthful, I suppose. At the same time, keeping it on topic about the budget, right? Keeping it on topic about the deficit. I mean, appreciate that we're at the center of this argument is a $40 billion deficit. And for those of you that might not understand why I'm accentuating the word like that, because that means that they're spending $40 billion bare minimum more than we have coming in. So that's really at the center of it, and they're just, adding to it with these little jabs about him trying to claim. You heard him. He said he was a dyed-in-the-wool feminist, and you would always have your back if you were in his government, which he meant, please vote for me. But the Conservatives are calling him at his word, taking him at his word.
The Prime Minister, who has long self-described as a feminist, starting in July and through anonymous sources, have repeatedly maligned Canada's first female finance minister by undermining her competency. This week, reports have suggested that the finance minister has been at odds with the Prime Minister, who's been bullying her to blow back her already exorbitant $40 billion deficit. And now we've got female cabinet ministers defending the Prime Minister's decision to bring in an unelected man to replace her job. Why?
Now, MP Grumple Gardner's a tough cookie. I've done videos on her. We know that. I want to point out how calm she is remaining, right? She's not yelling. She's not screaming. There's very little movement in her body language. She's simply stating her position.
Mr. Speaker, I always find it a bit rich when conservatives talk about feminism, when their own leader will use hashtags on his YouTube videos to attract men who hate women. Mr. Speaker, it is anything but feminist when they bring forward backdoor legislation to ban abortion in this country, or when they all vote against increased funding to combat gender-based violence or to support survivors. Their leader doesn't care about women or equality. He only cares about himself. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
See, there's a great example of many of those baseless claims that I was talking about. It's just a series of trigger words that they're hoping their base will hear, right? They said misogyny. They said backdoor legislation. They said shame on you. Like, it's just, there's nothing in there. There's no substance. There's no proof in there. I mean, hashtags? What? What? But I don't think they care about the facts. I think they only care about just making you think something so that you'll vote for them.
Well, the fact remains, Mr. Speaker, that after months of reports that the Prime Minister wanted to turf Canada's first female finance minister, we find out today that he's in talks to put an unelected, conflict of interest riddled man into the role. The Globe and Mail story must have really stung for every single Liberal backbencher who has carried the water of this scandal-plagued Prime Minister for years. Why wouldn't they be getting this job? So my question is this. Does the Prime Minister really think that there is no one in the elected Liberal caucus who could be the finance minister? Anybody? No one?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the nature of the questions coming from the opposition today speak more about their opposition to feminism than it does our commitment to feminism. But that's typical, Mr. Speaker, because actions speak louder than words in this case. When we brought forward things like the Canada Child Benefit or childcare, actual policies that help women, what did the Conservatives do? They voted against it. When we stand up for a woman's right to choose, what do the Conservatives do? They vote against it, bring in backdoor legislation to make it harder to access sexual health and reproductive rights in this country. When we work to make contraceptives free in this country, what do the Conservatives do? Stand in opposition. The real fake feminists are those folks on the other side of the Conservatives.
This is the leader of the House, and you heard it was actually all the same words, right? I don't know how daycare is empowering to a woman, if I'm honest with you. I understand the reality of that free birth control is not anywhere near what she's trying to make it seem. There are cultures in this country that don't permit people to use birth control. So really what they're doing there is trying to drive a wedge between, they're just trying to drive a wedge. But you heard her. Apparently, if you give a woman the right to have birth control, you're a feminist. Which is odd, because then she also said that if you give women the right to have daycare, you're also a feminist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think what we're seeing here today is conservatives trying to make feminism great again. But what they actually do is they don't elect women to their party. The leader actually uses misogynistic hashtags that promote violence against women. Mr. Speaker, they don't support reproductive health care for women. They want to ban abortion, health care for women. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to feminism, it's pretty clear conservatives are struggling, and this seems like a fight they don't want to take with us.
So again, nothing on the budget. Now, I'll be completely candid with you. I don't care much for that woman because she is always complaining that anytime anybody stands up to her, it's because she's a girl. It's not because she's incorrect. She's constantly screaming the word misogyny, misogyny, misogyny. I don't know what the rest of what she said sounded like. I don't know, something right out of grade 6, grade 5. Didn't really have much merit to it, but nowhere in here are they mentioning the guardrail or the billions of dollars that they're going past on this guardrail, or the fact that Chrystia Freeland's being removed and attempting to be replaced with Mark Carney, an unelected person. There's one left that I kept. I left it in its entirety so that you could understand the kind of stuff that the speaker was up against today with the amount of disruptions that were going on.
Mr. Speaker, feminism will always be great when there's no tokenism. The hypocrisy of this Prime Minister knows no bounds. He lectures everybody else about progress, saying women's rights and women's progress are
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
The honourable member from Halton, Norfolk. Please start again.
Mr. Speaker, feminism will always be great when there's no tokenism. The hypocrisy of this Prime Minister knows no bounds. He lectures everyone else about progress, saying women's rights and women's progress are under attack. My question for this Prime Minister is, will he park his hypocrisy and stop attacking the rights of women in his own caucus? Is this fake feminist Prime Minister going to really bully Canada's first female finance minister and have her read Carbon Tax Carney's update on Monday?
So there you go, inside of all of that, you know, where she just gives her the little poke about how we do it based on merit, not on just being, you know, whatever you were born, right? And I think that the Conservatives allowed the conversation to get derailed about the $40 billion because every single solitary person asked him about it today. Every Conservative that stood up with a question started with MP Scheer, and there were it was every one of them. And that was great because we need to know about the budget. But the Liberals, of course, retaliated or responded with only talking about feminism and only talking about Chrystia Freeland being a girl, right? Which is, of course, why I did a response to it. I think that talking about the gender of a person doesn't make you a good politician. And I wanted, you know, people out there that may be casting their vote on a few trigger words or on a few buzzwords or on a few hashtags, like they should pay attention to what is really transpiring here. The Conservative side of the bench is got all kinds of strong, powerful women in it who don't need to rest on their laurels. They're not there because they are females. They're there because they're capable and competent. I get that maybe the Liberals will vote for you based on what you look like, but Conservative people don't cast their vote that way. They would have had to listen. They would have asked questions. They would have been much less emotional and much more logical with their vote, which is what I'm attempting to encourage you to do. All right, I want to encourage you all to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with all of your socials. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I will talk to you next time.